Have any of you guys ever want to play a PC game on your own console? Well, I'm happy to tell you there actually are some PC games that came out on Nintendo 64 consoles during its lifespan. And there's actually pretty good ports of the system for it as well, in which I'll get you covering those games. Nintendo 64 has always been test-worthy for PC games to come to the system, besides the Dreamcast, and the results can actually be pretty good if done right, in which I'll be showing you guys some of the games that actually came out from the PC to Nintendo 64 system. So here we go. This isn't the first time that Quake's gotten a console port. In fact, it was ported over to the Sega Saturn a few years before. Although the game performance was good, many people didn't think that it was the right version to play, considering how down water it looked and everything. Because to be honest, when it came to that port, it was made from scratch. But however, for Quake 64, which is the title for this one, it actually does a pretty good job, like modifying everything and making everything look great for the PC version. The only difference is that some of the levels have been modified to fit to the cartridge. In which, if you guys do have the newly Quake Remaster, which came out not long ago for at least $10, there is a mod in the game that you can play Quake 64 under its blurry graphics and its gameplay, which is actually a nice thing they've actually done for the thing. I think when you guys find Quake 64, I think you'll find a great experience. Now, you do have to look up and down and such, but it's not going to be like a hard game you'll ever play. And I managed to beat Quake 64, in which I can tell you that you're going to have a fun experience, so don't let the graphics and everything fool you either. This game, in fact, also had a cult following, which there are a ton of mods out there you guys can even play and mess around with. And also, when it comes to the remaster version of the original game, you guys can actually play fan-made mods by going to the tab of add-ons and start downloading them and playing them. There isn't that many, but it works the same way as Doom 1 and 2 for those home consoles. Speaking of Quake, its sequel also got the same exact treatment. In fact, the home port versions of the original game and the PC version play completely different. Its gunplay is exactly the same, but its level design and such are mildly different. The only differences are the graphics for each PS1 and Nintendo 64 version, and the soundtrack's completely different too. So the new composer actually made some soundtracks for the Nintendo 64 version. Instead of everything that was all like rock and everything, it just retains everything that Quake 1 has also had. The controls are slightly changed as well, as use the C buttons to move and the joystick to move around. If you guys have the expansion pack accessory, you guys can actually play this game in much better state than anything, as it boosts the frame rate and graphics itself. And this game also has a 4-player deathmatch, in which some of you guys can also enjoy. If you guys like the home console versions, I think this game is for you. PS1 or Nintendo 64, it's for you. But if you guys want a multiplayer deathmatch, the Nintendo 64 version is the way to do it. The game can be oversensitive when it comes to controls and moving around, but if you guys can try to turn it all the way down, it should help you a little bit. It's not going to work a lot for you guys, because, let's be honest, the sensitivity of these controllers were, well, you know how it is. But that's how the games were made back in the day. But I think if you guys put the time and effort into playing this game, I think you guys will find something to enjoy with. I'm pretty sure you guys expected Duke Nukem to be coming to other consoles as well, as it did pretty well on the PC market. This game did get itself numerous console ports, including the Nintendo 64 version, in which it actually slightly changes the game a little bit. The graphics are a bit different when it comes to the Nintendo 64 version, the sprites are different, and you can actually rescue the ladies who have been trapped instead of just, killing them or leaving them. The game mainly plays the same as the PC version, but this is more of a friendlier version on Nintendo 64, as, Nintendo has these restrictions. But, they'll allow stuff like the same set of restrictions that they've been giving out people for Congress Path Third Day. but it's whatever. If you guys ever want to play Duke Nukem 64, there's also a mod I heard on the PC version that actually takes everything from the Nintendo 64 version and puts on the PC. Like I said, the game still has the same attitude, but there were some slight changes made just for the friendly appeal for Nintendo. It still has an M rated, but the game still mildly plays the exact same thing. This wouldn't be the only Duke Nukem game to come out on Nintendo 64, as Zero Hour will get its own exclusive, which was developed by Eurocom, in which the game also supports the expansion pack as well. But it's actually a third-person shooter rather than a first-person shooter. It's kind of similar how Time to Kill was made, but I think Eurocom also did a good job on that one. Hexen is one of the most definitive ways to play on a console when it comes to Nintendo 64. Yes, it gets released on Sega Saturn and PS1, but those are the poor versions, as those two versions actually got some frame rate issues and technical issues. But with the Nintendo 64 version, I think you guys will find everything to enjoy in that game. As the game has no noticeable frame rate issues, as the game actually does run pretty well. I don't have anything else to say about Hexen, but it's one of those Doom clones, except, well, it's actually published by id Software, so that does make sense for everything about the game. You do play as 3 different characters that each has their own different stats, which everything that you play, as all of them, will have different effects of the way you play them. Whether it be damage taken or strength to hit them, it's whatever. It's Hexen, and it's there to stay. It would get a few sequels, but that's it. This is the only Hexen game that came out on Nintendo 64, which is the first one. So, if you guys like Hexen, Nintendo 64 version's for you. I'm not a strategy game guy, but Command & Conquer does take the place for one of the best ports ever made for the system. This game came out late sometime in 1999, in which this game was made up in Scratch rather than being ported from the PC version, as this game uses 3D models and renders as well. Now, there is no video captures like the original games, but there are pictures of people talking, which I hope that does make up for it. There are 2 different campaigns, as each team, you have to complete objectives. I know Nintendo 64 mouse came out some point before the hand, but it doesn't support, unfortunately. But I think everything you'll find in this game will be much enjoyable. Again, this game was made from scratch, and to be quite honest, Nintendo actually published this game, believe it or not. So, the game is here to stay on the system, and it's one of the very few real-time strategy games that actually come to the system, besides another game that I'll cover in a little bit soon. So if you're one of those guys who likes real-time strategy games, then I think this is the game for you. I would have recorded this game, but I had technical issues, so I couldn't really play it. But anyways, I still do plan on getting this game, as this is one of the games that has like some sort of Tomb Raider vibes in it for Nintendo 64. It's a shame that Tomb Raider never actually came out on Nintendo 64. The game kind of has similar controls like Ocarina of Time in its little display, but I will go on to say, if you guys do like this game, or at least want to give it a try, go ahead. The PC version received mixed reviews for its poor controls and such, but I would highly recommend you guys just get the Nintendo 64 version, as that game got much better reviews. There's also a sequel for this game, which also came out on the original Xbox and PS2, known as The Emperor's Tomb. It's also backwards compatible on Xbox 360, One, and Series X. I think if you guys like this game and think you want more of it, then go for the sequel of Emperor's Tomb on the Xbox systems. It's best if you play on the Xbox versions, as it's supposed to be a much better version to play anyways. So go ahead. I think when it comes to first-person strategy games, this is one of the few games that actually got a pretty good port. This was ported by Sapphire, who also ported the Rainbow Six Rogue Speeder on PS1, and also ported Army Men Sergeant's Heroes on the Dreamcast. I haven't noticed any sort of frame rate issues when it comes to playing this game, as it actually runs, I'm pretty sure it runs 60 frames per second, because of that frame rate I've been noticing quite a lot in this game. It plays like your typical PC game, as you use the C buttons to move and you use the joystick to look. When it comes to this game, it has more buttons, and I actually have more. I have much better experience playing the game with the Retro Fighters controller, as it grew comfortable with me for that game. But if you guys want a great port that has everything you need, then you guys can get the Dreamcast version, as it supports mouse and keyboard along with extra missions, which is the Eco Watch Missions pack, which only came out on PC. As this is either this or Dreamcast version is one of your definitive ways of playing the game. Avoid the PS1 version, as it plays completely slightly different, as it was made by a completely different company. I also want to mention that the Dreamcast version was ported by a different company, but the difference is they actually did a much better job for the piece for copy and pasting the PC version, as Dreamcast the PC version actually do look quite identical. If I ever told someone that Starcraft actually came on consoles, people would probably look at me like it was an April Fool's joke. But this is a no April Fool's joke matter, as this is the only game that came out on Nintendo 64 as in the Starcraft universe. This is the only Starcraft game that came out on the consoles for its time. If you guys have the expansion pack for Nintendo 64, you guys can play as extra missions and its extra campaign in the game, which is nice. Now, it doesn't support mouse support like the Nintendo 64 mouse, like the accessory that once was there. But if you guys can play this on Nintendo 64, I think you'll have a fun time with it if you guys are a fan of those types of strategy games. But again, this is the only Blizzard game that came out on Nintendo during this time before they come back for Nintendo Switch, which is a big surprise to everyone. Worms Armageddon is another PC game that actually came to the system. It also came out on the PS1 and Dreamcast, which the Nintendo 64 version would be like the latest one. What's strange to me is that this game is the most expensive Nintendo 64 game to try to look out and buy, because right now it's like $300 just to go get it. But it's always cheaper if you guys just get it on the Dreamcast or PS1. Well, speaking of PS1, this game is set to come to the PlayStation Plus newly premium subscription, along with Worms World Party, in which I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy the game up to like 4 players when it comes to the Dreamcast. I don't exactly know if the PS1 version will have, just this basic 2 players or just 4 players with the multi-tab stuff. But I do know that if you guys take the time and effort and play with each other up to 4 players, I think you guys will find some great moments in the game. But I think this is all I'm going to cover for right now. There is another one which was Armageddon, but that was a bad port, and there was Rayman 2, which also was a great game to play on there. But most people have always said that Rayman 2 should just be played on the Dreamcast, considering most people have always say it's one of the best ports out there. But anyways, I think this is all I'm going to cover right now. Let me know what you guys think about some of these games.